I will now introduce Jean Baderschneider before our panel on cleaning the supply chains. Jean is the head of the Global Fund to End Slavery, which has just received $25 million from the State Department and $27 million from the UK government to try to help to end slavery. So she will speak today of that, and she will speak also of something which is for me extremely important, which is the role of investors in fighting slavery. Why do investors invest in corporations or in companies without paying attention of what they do for forced labor, as they pay attention on what they do in money laundering? So we would love investors to start to pay attention to the issue, because it would help the fight against slavery. Jean, if you want, she has a brilliant career at Mobile XCOM. And at Mobile, she had to deal with the largest of all supply chains, so she knows a bit about it. Thank you, Jean. Good to have you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Monique. It's a real privilege to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Modern slavery is a crime of economic opportunity, and as most of the people in this room know, it is big business with a global footprint that generates an estimated $150 billion in illegal profits to traffickers, and we know that number is low. It goes back to 2012. It's second only to drug trafficking, and now people are trafficking people in the same lanes as drugs. How entrepreneurial, right? While NGOs and civil society continue the fight, we need business leaders to proactively engage to create market-based solutions that have an opportunity to really drive sustainable impact. And this means corporations cleaning up their supply chains and investors investing in those who do, and ensuring they both achieve competitive returns. Let me start first with just a few comments on the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery, because we are focused as part of our strategy on this issue. Over the past 4 years, and it's taken at least that, thanks to champions in the US government and the UK government and so many others, we have worked to establish the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery. As Monique indicated, we recently secured the initial $25 million contribution as seed funding from the United States. The UK, with the help of the Prime Minister, who has been a great advocate, last month announced their contribution of 20 million pounds or 27 million US dollars. We also have a private donor who has matched that 25 million. The Global Fund is designed as a public-private partnership focused on creating a global strategy that really coordinates across countries and entities, raising the resources necessary and commensurate with funding that strategy, ensuring governments are engaged and accountable through budgeted national plans that they own and they lead the development of, and promoting proactive business engagement, which includes both supply and demand side solutions and also includes efforts related to trade, FDI, banking, and investment. So while the spending by governments and NGOs to fight trafficking has been in the millions with an M, a drop in the bucket compared to the billion number I just talked about, the buying power of businesses and socially responsible investors is in the trillions with a T. And that can make this a fair fight. So let's start on the demand side. Businesses need to ensure their supply chains are free of modern slavery, and that means ensuring that their products and services are not produced by forced labor. And if clean supply chains are to be sustained, they must achieve greater profitability as a result. They will make more money with clean supply chains, I know that. And investors must reward that effort and profitability, and they will have greater returns if they invest in companies with clean supply chains. Having run an extremely large supply chain in ExxonMobil, I know how challenging it is to interrogate very deep and very opaque supply chains, but it is doable. Supply chain optimization and strategic procurement are well-defined functions in companies, and optimization of a company's entire purchase-to-pay process is not new and can deliver value. And investors want well-run, effective supply chains because they know it delivers to the bottom line. Companies can manage efforts to clean up their supply chains like any other risk in their business. This means developing and utilizing effective risk assessment tools. We were just talking about this in the last session, that can analyze a company's spend profile to determine the specific locations and commodities and services where there is the greatest risk of slavery, making risk mitigation more focused and doable and prioritized. Again, something that's valued by investors. Once identified, these risks require robust risk mitigation processes, including strategic procurement like total system cost approaches that can account for increases in productivity. Procurement protocols like bid conditioning and supplier authentication, and robust operations like inspections and ethical codes of conduct, etc. That's the demand side. On the supply side, companies can work to reduce the supply of forced labor by investing in and growing businesses in local communities that can then become their own local suppliers, and by providing relevant training and skill development to local populations, companies can create sustainable jobs that meet the market, not philanthropy. This workforce investment can create long-term value, and again, something that investors value. So let's turn more specifically to investors for just a minute. Investors can direct trillions, with a T, of investment dollars to companies with strong human rights policies and clean supply chains. But this cannot be charity or philanthropy. To sustain, really sustain, a clean supply chain, a company must show greater returns through clean supply chain action, and these returns must translate to the investors as well. Responsible investors are now looking at supply chain issues to understand their impact on the bottom line. Consider the following. Sustainable, responsible, and impact investing category grew 33% from 2014 and 2016 in the US, from 6.6 trillion to 8.7 trillion. At the global level, there's 23 trillion of assets under professional management in the environment, social, and governance realm, up 25% to 26% of all assets under management. This is promising. Pause. Now, we need to do more to incentivize, socialize, and normalize this issue to the point that companies, investors, and financial institutions can confidently do the right thing with the support of governments and civil society, similar to how the fight, as Monique mentioned, against money laundering has incentivized. We need protections in place for companies that do the right thing, like the safe harbor approach in money laundering, which was designed to protect financial institutions from criminal and civil liability for disclosing information if they report their suspicions in good faith. We need to foster an environment and a culture in which companies are protected when they speak up in good faith about suspected forced labor in their supply chains, and then they do something real and sustainable about it. So let me close by saying we need a 360-degree focus to end modern slavery. Governments, NGOs, businesses, and investors. Business engagement is key to ending slavery by making it economically unprofitable, and investors will make or break this effort as they contribute to the money flow and all that that money flow can incentivize. I say to traffickers and slavers, we are on to you. We are following the money straight to you, and we plan to support anyone who denies profits to you. Thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
We are on to you. It's a very good definition. I love it. Thank you, Jean.